Okay, we ready? Welcome to the Community and Economic Development Committee. Let's go around and introduce each other. I'm John Weddleton.
Dick Training Assembly.
Pete Peterson. Dave Whitfield with Planning.
Sharon Ferguson, Planning.
Brian Yo with Planning.
Erica McConnell, OECD.
Andy Honest, Municipal Clerk's Office.
Matt Jones, Babylon.
Dave DeLuca, Babylon.
Jason West, Babylon. David Caldwell, Babylon.
Marina Komkov, Icefall Architecture.
Jordan Huss, Great Northern Canvas.
Steve Brashear, Great Northern Canvas.
Jason Brandeis, attorney for Great Northern Canvas.
Chris Usher, RC Box.
Rick Usher, Varsity Box.
Mike Morgan, Old School Buffy policy.
Ryan Thor, Florida Good Root.
All right, welcome everyone. So, we got the agenda, and this is committee meeting, so largely the questions, if you're not familiar with it, are amongst the staff and the assembly members. And when your case comes up, you're welcome to sit here. Everyone will get a chance to speak on their issue. But what we do is don't talk back and forth between ourselves so much across the table. If you want to talk, wave to me, and we'll go around and make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. Okay, so we've got Babylon Company on first, and we'll start with Mandy on the licensing committee.
So they do not have any taxes, fees, or fines. There is one supplemental document that will be added to their application. It was to address the temperature and moisture control. That's one of the requirements for entities that do extracts. And so they have that and they'll be added on. Otherwise, all of the other licensing requirements are fulfilled.
Thank you. And Sharon, this is yours.
Yes, it's mine. Good morning, everyone. The Babylon Company is applying for a special land use permit for a marijuana manufacturing establishment. It's located at 6820 Rosewood Street in Unit 9. It's in the Taku Campbell Kingdom Council. The manufacturing will occur in a warehouse condominium building that has 14 units. They'll occupy one of these units. The size of that unit is 1,200 square feet. There is a photo of the buildings in your packet, just to give you an idea of what it looks like. The business will operate 24 hours a day, Monday through Sunday, although, of course, it's not open to the public, and they are in a I-1 zoning district. The only condition for them, other than the boilerplate ones, is in terms of their accessible parking spaces, they have to have the proper markings and signage for those.
All right, thank you. Any questions from committee members? Pete?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it looks like they have enough room, enough area for parking.
They
so
do. Yeah.
You just have to get the lines in.
They have to get all the accessible, the sign up, and then the striping. But they have adequate parking
We'll have to
spaces.
Get that done when
So
spring
this,
gets here.
right.
Thank you.
Anything else? You guys familiar with the few conditions and so on? I had one question. You said 1,200 square feet, but in the packet, they're calling it 1,500.
I think it was an error. In one part of their packet, it does say 1,500, and then another part of their application, it says 1,200.
Okay. And it's 15 or 12?
It's 1,200.
Okay. And so you have a big warehouse, and then you're building something inside?
No, it's a condominium units. They're all, if you look at the photo, it's in.
Well, I got that, but within your unit, though,
Yeah,
it's like
we
you're building
dropped
a
two 8x20 connexes and welded them together.
And that's where you're actually doing the work, and the rest is...
All self-contained.
Is that for cleanliness or?
It's a clean room environment.
Mhm.
And
You're going to need a plasma torch to get in there.
And then you've got a whole long list of different products.
Mhm.
Are you going to make all those products, or
Yes,
just like
sir.
leaving it open for later?
Add more.
Beg your pardon?
Add more.
So if you do more, you have to come back and
Yep.
announce it. When do you guys expect to open?
Early 2017.
Early next year. I don't have anything else.
Well,
Pete?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. You say you've got these connexes, where would they be?
It's inside.
It's inside.
They're
It's
inside?
already built.
Yeah, it's done.
It's
Oh.
been permitted, inspected, and is complete.
Do you have fire suppression on the inside of the connexes? Good.
That's unique.
And this unit is separated from the other units, and this, they can't jump from one unit to the other.
It's a CMD block.
What kind of roof do they have? Sometimes people try to go into the roof.
Well, the Connex has the full-on Connex roofs.
It's completely enclosed.
Your Easter connexes?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we recommend?
Recommend approval, send it to the semi.
Second.
No opposition? Okay. So you know what we do at the meetings on Tuesday, you guys will come up and it'll be a public hearing, you're certainly welcome to speak, and then we'll just, let the rest of the assembly members know that this maybe we reviewed it and we recommended approval. And then we'll vote, so that's not a guaranteed approval, but it just means that way. Good, thank you.
What would any reasons be for not approving at this point?
Because you have 11 people, only got a few here, and who knows between now and Tuesday? You know? Burn some sage or whatever you want to do. I don't think it'll be a problem with it. But we'll see what happens on Tuesday.
Okay.
And that's why we do these meetings, to flesh out kind of any of the issues, we didn't see anything jump out here, so.
It's unique putting connexes in there though and sealing it all up, so.
Very good, thank you.
All right, thank you.
That's good. We're gonna do some connexes. Connexes to go down.
Yeah.
I know traffic, you know, what happens when you live.
Okay, next
Been around
up,
forever, haven't you?
next up is Tinderbox. Amanda, you want to go through the license?
Yeah. So RC Tinderbox, they have no pending taxes, fees, or fines. They had one that was taken care of early on. All of their licensing conditions have been met. There's a supplemental document that will be added as an AIM that also takes care of the moisture and temperature control requirements. So everything else has been met.
So that's the first we've heard of it, is this new?
It's in ours, so as part of our restricted access in 1080 is the licensing. There's requirement for moisture and temperature control to prevent mold and.
We had
to
two in a row where
prevent-
that was an issue.
I'm sorry, yeah,
We've
and I
never heard
think
of it before.
we've discussed, so it's for, manufacturing specifically. So, it's under the manufacturing requirements specifically, so.
Okay, and this is, Dave.
Good morning, everyone. Chris and Rick Usher are applying for, requesting special land use permit approval for a marijuana manufacturing facility in the I-1 district located at 7801 King Street. The facility will, occupy 784 square feet in the existing warehouse building and will operate 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. The applicant has already received approval for a cultivation license at the same location. Generally speaking, the application meets the approval criteria required by Title 21. A couple things of note. I evaluated the business's separation from the protected land uses with regard to the proposed 200-foot as the crow flies measurement, and it looks like it does meet that, as well as the proposed pedestrian walking route. So I don't believe that's going to be an issue. Just one other thing of note. In the staff report, it does say that there was one comment in opposition to this. That is an error. That was on the first approval, so I just want to bring that up. There were no comments opposing this particular license. So with that being said, staff would recommend approval of this license request subject to the condition applications listed in the staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Anything from Assembly Committee member?
They've been coming to all the committee council meetings on a regular basis, better than some of the members of the committee council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so, have you hired the industrial hygienist?
We sure did. We didn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
Well, we hired him.
We
and
found one.
We got the report back. It's a 10-page report. We got that back yesterday, late in the afternoon, so it wasn't available to put in this packet, but we do have that.
And what exactly do they do?
Very interestingly enough, they go through all of our products and they make sure that whatever we're proposing is not going to blow up the neighborhood, that there is no hazards to employees, that we have protective gear, if any of our processes need any type of HACCP plan, and we're working with the DEC on that as well.
Great, thank you.
I may mention, Chris and Rick have been actively working with staff. Obviously, they've been here at every committee meeting, and they've been actively working with staff to resolve all the issues associated with their approval. So it's been a great working relationship, and they've been very active. So I just want to point that out as well.
Any other comments today?
You got all the parking taken care of, you need food?
We have a recorded parking agreement with the city.
We did that during our cultivation.
Thanks for being involved from the beginning of this process. We started as you were there, it was nice to see, it's funny getting this point for it.
We're getting there close.
So what's the status of having the hygienicist check? And this is for manufacturing. The hygienicist has to check. We've seen that in the other case too. And is that, that's a condition for approval that someone has come in and analyzed the whole operation?
Correct.
Does the assembly want to see the report?
I do have.
I'd like to see one, just
For
There is one in the,
but you got my dentist report?
Yeah.
I
Let's see
got
what
it late.
looks like.
But I don't think it's in the
Yeah.
packet that you have.
I didn't see it, unless I missed it.
No, because we just got it yesterday.
Did you get it? What? Would you do that, please? Because as John was saying, we don't see that many coming through. Because the last person that did this had to go outside to get hygienists pulling up there. Did you find the local one there on this?
Yes.
Good.
I'm sure that's.
No, that's the only one. That's the only one I have.
Oh,
But I
okay.
have it on an email, so
Oh, okay.
if you want, we can have
Would
that
you
right.
mind sending it to both entities?
So
Sure.
Einstein's hygienist was one that's specifically in the industry in Colorado. That's why they wanted to bring them up, and that's why staff is going to be invited when they come to the inspection.
Any other comments?
Well, and we may be seeing more of these applications, coming through because we're getting to the point where some retail outfits are getting ready to open, and so the manufacturers are going to be providing product for those new locations. So I expect we may have more of these.
Mandy, can our supplemental to your question get into here?
It did not, and that's gonna be an AIM also, so I'll just do one
Okay.
AIM, and it'll have the supplemental, and it'll attach the industrial hygienist report as well.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, Amy?
Yeah, so what, when you're going through, obviously for the building permit, or the fire permit's supposed to be done, right? So at what point does the fire permit go in when you have all your manufacturing stuff set up?
Oh, well, we have to build it first. Right now, we're stuck in building permit mode, and we have not submitted our building permit. We had some HVAC issues that we were going through with our engineers. But once we do that, I've been told that then they'll come in afterwards and everything's all built and everything's in place, and they'll come in and take a look.
And all your equipment. And the other reason I say there is a big difference between Leominster going through and your actual station as a service area going through. So, and you might have heard when I was talking to the guy from Mountain View. Einstein? Yeah. But they always have what they call quick action plans. Every fire department who services the local area, or services like I said, these guys aren't looking for closing lines, right? They're literally looking for, what, like, kill me or my crew when I walk in the door.
Dangerous, yeah. Thank you.
Can you talk to me, since you're doing manufacturing, can you talk to me a little bit about your different processes that you're using?
Very simple. We're doing bubble hash, which is just ice water and screens. We're doing keef, which keef coins are automatically coming off the flour. So
when you shake the flour, the trichomes are gonna fall off and then they collect it. And then
that's
squeeze
key.
it together.
right.
You know exactly where I'm going. You have to dumb it down.
Yeah.
The only thing that we're doing that is the alcohol distillation. That's, and it's, no CO2, no.
And this license is different than, I think, any license you've seen, because it's only the concentrate license. It's not gonna be making any edibles. Okay, yeah, so we can't make any products, it's just the concentrates, and it's only those processes that we made. It's like the old school process.
To start.
Yeah, sure.
Anything else?
This just fascinates me, because I've never seen manufacturing in action, so.
Well, you're welcome to come by once we get it built.
Well, you know me, I probably will.
That's fine.
What do we recommend?
Recommend approval.
Second. Any opposition? All right. That's what we'll do. Thank you.
I do have something that I wanted to ask. It was brought up yesterday about armed guards.
Guards.
Yes. We talked to our insurance, our insurance, as long as we subcontract out and they have their own insurance, we can contract an armed guard, that is part of our operating plan, is to have 2 armed guards there to protect us and our employees. And that's 24 hours a day,
And it's important to note that it is a different company that would be servicing the area, not necessarily the cannabis business, so there is a line of distinction, and they don't have unfettered access into the cannabis licensed area.
Yes.
And they will actually be patrolling the entire street that we're on, so.
I think that's great.
Are you doing it? Because you have some other operations
Yeah,
right there too, so you're.
This is our security.
I followed you in, by the way.
Yeah.
I was faster, I went around the buses.
Oh, you got around it before I did.
Now, honestly, I think the prohibition, personally, you heard me yesterday, the prohibition on businesses specifically, even though I personally think they should be allowed on premises, because I recognize the risk, and as long as they're licensed and insured.
Yes.
Like I said, there's certain security right now in bars in Anchorage that carry. They have to have a special license to do it, which Larry has. But it only makes sense, right?
Well,
It
it's
doesn't-
protecting ourselves and our employees. I could care less about the money or the product.
That's
I'm
insured.
worried about our
You can't play the person.
That's right.
Right.
No, so I don't think, especially because they're not inside of the premise, the licensed area, right?
Well, if there's an
No.
incident, then they would be going inside.
You know the regulations better than I do.
It's not the regulations that's the issue, it's the federal law. So the federal law, it's a higher criminal penalty if you are distributing marijuana products and you're doing it with a gun, like on you.
He's not distributing it.
Exactly. And so, this is kind of a gray area. It's kind of still needs to be fleshed out legally, but we just wanted to be honest with the
Because
assembly.
it is part of our plan.
I think it's smart.
And they will be sitting inside. I'm not gonna have them sit out in the cold. They will be behind glass looking at the door.
At the door, the front door.
And two, if you can look at municipal code and if you can come up with suggestions, I don't know about anybody else, but I personally am happy to create legislation to clarify the municipal level, as long as they're not an owner operator of the facility and they are licensed, just like, within bars, they have to, and insured. I would be happy to carry that to clarify. It might give the industry a little bit of, I don't want to say cover fire, but a little bit of
Protection.
Comfort level.
Yeah, comfort level, and to show intent from a city level in case there's some sort of federal issue.
Right.
It's not saying, it's just like everything else in the wine industry is doing. Listen, if the feds turn around and, January 21st and tell you guys you're done, right? But, we'll just, I just think it's rational.
it's rational, and I'll also work up some like disclaimer language that might make Attorney Halsey more comfortable, because he might
Well,
not.
I wanted disclaimer language, frankly, on all of the marijuana stuff when we passed it, because, I mean, I had discussions with multiple lawyers saying, as some of them are voting to approve this, we can be potentially committing a felony.
Yeah.
And, you know, but again, we did it.
Institutional.
Right.
You know, but, as I said, I think the disclaimer language would help, with some buy-in.
Might make you guys feel more comfortable.
But, you know, to me, I mean, listen, most of us are on the public safety committee too. And most of us anticipate this is gonna be a problem, and it's gonna be a problem for the owners and the employees.
And I'll just tell you from Arizona, the biggest thing that we do see when it comes to people robbing these types of establishments is not in the licensed establishment, it's in the outside, it's in the parking lot. I had a client that was followed to their off-site office and robbed at gunpoint. And
Well,
it's,
it's probably not cash on hand.
right, but they were keeping cash, they had $250,000 at the office, and that got stolen. So it's usually not within the licensed premises because there's all these security cameras, there's all these like, you know, ways to stop those, you know, get caught. So it's usually in the parking lot or on the outside, which is, you know, is the reason why these guys are gonna be looping around.
Can I just ask one more question?
We're straight from the agenda.
Sorry.
No, we have a little bit.
And Dick wants to know.
But it's about security, so, have you guys talked, with this particular, security issue, as you're talking about the potential, and this is totally off the agenda, but as an attorney, I think it would be helpful for you to advise your clients too. Anybody can look up where anybody lives on the municipal tax roll. So it may be beneficial for your employees to, put their homes or whatever in, trust or in something to, maybe, LLC, something that's not their specific, here's Rick's house, you know.
Right.
Anyways,
And
I
that's,
digress.
yeah, no, and that's a good point, you know, and there's, you know, some wisdom into not posting, you know, the diagram showing every single camera and which way it points.
Yeah.
We've even installed cameras in our cultivator's house in Palmer.
Yes.
So.
We do residential.
We're not there yet.
That way, if anybody follows him home, we know he's safe.
All right, thanks, Dick, you had a comment?
Just as Amy was saying, we can do things with the assembly, but I'd like you to get with the state and find out the state's law, because I don't put you upside down with the state. Find out what the state's law is relative to being farmed. And then if we have to modify the city one, we can do that in the city law, because as Amy said, we're also on the public safety committee, most of us. We wanna make sure your employees are safe. So, and there's bad people out there. We see Walmart's getting knocked over, we see Walgreens. It's not just your industry right now, it's going on everywhere across
It's
the
bad
country.
this year.
We had another 26 officers yesterday, but we still are way down where we should be.
I will do that.
All right, so do we have a motion on this?
Yeah, we already-
No, we already did, we've been through that, okay, good. All right, you too.
Thank you.
Don't stay away from our meetings, Judy, he'll still come here.
Oh, believe me, I'll still be there.
Okay, Great Northern. Okay, so this is Great Northern, manager, you want to talk about the licensing?
So we have one pending taxes fee or fine. I haven't heard back from Amy yet. It may have been paid. I know I received an email saying it was taken care of. I'm just waiting for an email back from her. So other than that, all licensing requirements are fulfilled.
Phil, what about power? I'm looking on here, I see you guys have some concern.
This one required a power upgrade, which has been completed and energized, so the power should be fine.
Sufficient then.
Now,
Thank you, Phil, for being here.
And this is, who's this at? Brian?
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant, Steve Brashear of Great Northern Kansas, is applying for a special land use permit for a marijuana cultivation establishment with a total of approximately 5,000 square facilities within an I-1 district generally located southwest of the intersection of Lake Otis Parkway and East 79th Avenue. Petitioner has demonstrated the necessary steps to bring the site into compliance with current municipal code. Examples of this include the development of pedestrian access facilities, reorientation of the parking area, providing adequate snow storage area, and required trash receptacle screening. Petitioner has also secured non-conforming rights with lack of visual enhancement landscaping along Cinnamon Loop. Plans submitted to the planning department do not show any major alterations to the building facade or structure that would make it of dissimilar character, scale, or size when compared to surrounding structures. And in our code compliance checklist, we are required to report any additional marijuana licenses within 1,000 feet. In Danish Gardens, the license number M10310 at 2430 Cinnamon Loop is within that 1,000-foot buffer. That's directly to the south of them. Planning Department does recommend approval for the special land use permit, subject to the conditions as stated in the staff report.
All right, thank you. Any comments from committee members?
I didn't see any issues on this one, but for full disclosure, I did work for one of the Applicat dads for like years and years. But
I've been here, like, it's in the Monmouth Community Council area, so it's not really a problem. It's industrial area.
it is an intimidating issues. As you guys engage the community, what were the biggest concerns? I don't know what you're trying to say, but what were the biggest concerns that you heard from the community council?
Pretty much the concerns were odor control and security. Those were the two biggest issues. And we explained to them that we were putting in a state-of-the-art HVAC climate control system with carbon filtration. So we're very confident that odor is not going to be an issue for us, but we're still going to perform inspections around the perimeter of the property on a routine basis just to make sure. And obviously our neighbors, I'm sure, would let us know if they detect anything as well. We actually held 2 meetings. The first one was at our facility, held for just the local community. That was our initial community meeting. And we had one neighbor show up, so we established a relationship with that individual and told him what we were doing and spent some time talking with him. We met the other neighbor on the opposite side of our building, just not at that meeting, but just encountering them while we were at the property. We spent some time talking to that individual as well. His biggest concern was security, because he had issues with security issues at his own property. So we explained some of the things we're doing with cameras and motion detectors and the new gate fence that we're putting up. It's already installed, and he thought that was great. He was telling us some of the things he had done as well, so we were sharing knowledge. So at the community council meeting, we talked about some of the same things, odor control and security. So those were really 2 big issues. But I think they felt comfortable with our responses. They did issue a resolution of support for us. So
The thing I guess I never really thought about how expensive your HVAC systems were potentially could be, and I almost fell off my chair the first time I saw that number. I just didn't realize how expensive they are.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Buy a house.
Yes,
Nice house.
you can probably buy my house twice. Yeah, it was incredible, and I think that's probably gonna be one of the biggest issues a lot of these businesses have is literally, it's expensive to make all the regulations, whether it's security, the odor, the whole 9 yards. So, I didn't see anything that I was concerned about in the plan. It looked pretty well put out and put forward and thought out, and, I think you'll be just fine. The biggest issue is, obviously, you guys are in a good district, because you're right in a heavy, industrial, kind of, a lot of industrial kind of too, but, you're in a good area. I don't think there's gonna be real issues with the neighbors. I can't see any in this particular.
Just the elementary school, that's not, Lake Otis in the bog. Just close to it, but it's within acceptable limits as far as distance is concerned.
Sure.
By the way, the community council's now moved back to elementary school, so if you're thinking about going and you go to the old coffee shack, they're not there. They
Right.
just-
Sure. Yeah, we went to one since they moved to the new location.
Okay, anything else on this?
We do note that the Assembly members part over for this.
Yeah, Patrick, I saw him on there. I've been waiting for his to come through,
Should
but
we
I
re-
can't find anything to criticize.
Should we not
I
vote on this
tried.
because the name's on here?
I tried. I read it 3 times trying to find something. I'm like, I know that, I'm sure he knew that.
He had no library fines or anything.
I know.
He has a library card?
I served with her too.
Okay, so, and then there was a AWU fine thing at the hospital, but you took care of that?
We took care of it. It was, thank you.
Yeah,
Wastewater
there
utility
was,
when we $187.
So there was library, there's AWU, I'm waiting to hear back, I received email notification that they took care of it, so I'm just waiting to hear back from AWU for verification, email and attach it.
You got email from them?
I got an email from them, yeah.
There's something that we've seen in a lot of these, is that there's concerns about wastewater, and you had some kind of write-up about what you were gonna do in hazardous wastewater, and water utilities are pour it down the drain.
Well, I think we were just I actually come from an environmental background, worked in the environmental field for oil and gas right now. But a lot of the nutrients that are used have things in them, maybe heavy metals and things like that. We just felt like we couldn't assume automatically that any of that wastewater should be just poured down the drain. A reverse osmosis system is a simple, at least in our mind, a simple way to pre-treat that water, if you will, before we put it down the drain. We might even be able to recycle that water, which would be beneficial for everybody, including us. So we put that into our operating plan, not necessarily because we thought it was required, but because we thought it was the best management practice, and just better to err on the side of caution, be responsible operators. So we feel like by having a reverse osmosis in place that we remove any doubt.
Good, thanks. Something to think about. And one thing, because we've seen this a number of times, right? So my thing is it must be an issue in other states, and that's why it's coming into ours. But our water utility is saying, oh, we think we're good, but what if the water utility finds out in a year, oh, we're having trouble, and then comes back and retroactively wants places to handle their wastewater differently? You're ready, but other places may not be, and that might be an issue with some.
I actually looked at the ADEC website and was reviewing some of their regulations for discharges, just out of curiosity, wondering if maybe they thought about the industry. There's actually a link on their website addressing the marijuana industry, but they don't have any specific requirements. It basically indicates that you're supposed to work it out with your municipal water treatment facility. And so they kind of, for now at least, are leaving it in their hands.
So who is that?
Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation.
Oh, okay.
So,
When we asked AWU, we wanted specific to know, we got the answer back. At least their ability now.
I think their answer was, we're okay with it now.
Yeah, they're taking kind of a wait and see.
But now, that's
But
what
they do
we do.
periodically test their water. And so it is gonna be, if it comes back and becomes an issue, I mean, the fact is, somebody's probably gonna mandate on the next license that people update the system.
it's easier to do it up front, I think, for us to do it now while we're constructing the facility, because it's gonna be less burdensome for us. If it becomes a requirement later on, we'll be ready.
Okay, anything else from assembly members? What do we recommend?
Recommend approval.
Yeah.
Second.
Any opposition? And one thing we said, approval of their default is with the conditions.
Right, yeah.
We're not voicing that until
Right.
our implication, so. Okay, well, good. See you Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Wait till you see your packet.
All this, you've all read it. All right, next one is our Gerber. Any and all.
Just wait.
Okay, so, what did we do? We had, the resolution. Who wants to talk on this?
I'll talk on this.
Erica?
So, I think everybody knows there were some allegations, through the news media that, Arctic Herbery had, given away product to the public, and the state of Alaska, AMCO, issued a notice of violation against the cultivation license and against the retail license. And, the way the state violations work is that the enforcement officers issue these notices of violations, the licensee is required to respond in writing to the director, and then the director makes a decision about whether to pass the matter on to the Marijuana Control Board or whether the director is satisfied with the response. In either situation, the Marijuana Control Board is notified, but the director either asks for action or or doesn't recommend that the Marijuana Control Board take action. In this situation, the director was satisfied with the written response from Mr. Thorpe and did not recommend that the Marijuana Control Board take any action. I would note that the MCB does have the authority to not accept that recommendation from the director and decide to take action on their own anyway. In this situation, they did not do that. The two resolutions that were put forth to the Assembly basically postpone action or postpone Mr. Thorpe's ability to move forward until he reports back to the Assembly on the action taken by the Marijuana Control Board. So now we know that the Marijuana Control Board has not taken any action. The Municipal Code Enforcement opened an investigation and met with Mr. Thorpe, and he admitted to violating municipal code and agreed to pay a fine. He has paid the fine, and so Code Enforcement considers the matter closed. So the staff recommends that the Assembly vote down these two resolutions and then also consider the matter closed. And that would then allow Mr. Thorpe to move forward with both his cultivation and his retail licenses.
Okay, so what did so Code Enforcement was looking at what exactly?
I apologize, I didn't bring the paperwork, but it was basically not appropriately dealing with samples that he had received from cultivation facilities, providing marijuana free to the public. There were 3 issues, that was 2 of them, but the third one was related.
Not packaged properly.
Oh, not packaged properly.
And what was the
Not
amount?
tested.
What was the dollar amount?
$1,100.
But so it was 1 day's. So there were 3 violations. It was considered to be 1 violation or each violation was considered to have happened once. One was $500 a day, one was $500 a day, and one was $100 a day. So those 3 things added up to $1,100.
Okay. Mr. Crane?
So Erica, what are you asking this committee to do? I know you said that somebody should turn down this. What are you asking this committee to do?
I think this committee should make a recommendation to the full Assembly to vote no on the 2 resolutions that are going to be up on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Amy?
Were you done, Dick? So, how many times, Mr. Thorpe, did you give out marijuana free to the public?
How many times, how many days?
No, I'm saying how many times?
I tell you, to the public is adequate.
Not you, not somebody in your family.
Employees,
Not you, but somebody in your family.
8, 9 pieces, and maybe.
Erica, is the recommendation from staff the reason not to move these 2 ordinances or resolutions forward because effectively the reference of the violations have been not really issued by the state?
So, if you pass these resolutions, Mr. Thorpe will come back and say the Marijuana Control Board took no action.
Right.
And we already know that. So
Right.
there doesn't really seem to be any point in passing the resolutions. We feel that that Code Enforcement, suspected a violation, went, addressed the issue, found there was a violation, issued a fine, the fine was paid. So the matter, from a Code Enforcement standpoint, has been completed. I think that Mr. Thorpe probably, I can't speak for him, he's here, but I feel like he has understood that he did violate code and has learned not to do that again.
So I would think, looking at these specific resolutions, if you were to move a resolution forward, it'd be more appropriate to reference municipal code violations have an operator who comes in, they haven't even gotten started yet, and they are absolutely flagrant in their violations of code, and they try to skirt around it like, well, it was just my employees or just my friends. I think it puts a lot of assembly members basically on edge and say, okay, do we have a bad operator here? Is this what we're gonna start seeing from you? And that's the concern, because again, you have to be first on many realms. So, I'm very concerned about this. To be frank, if this license in totality would come up in front of us again, I would not vote for it, because of I can only go on base behavior. So I'm hopeful that as this license comes back for renewal, we don't have any other issues, and this is just a one-off and a learning experience. It could be that. I'm not saying it's not that, it could be that. But I won't be, I get where they're going with this specific reference to code. But I wanna make sure there's a robust dialogue at the assembly. So, I'm not gonna be voting for any sort of motion to turn this down or not turn this down. I'd rather have the full assembly just have the discussion without a recommendation from the committee. That's my opinion.
Why don't you make some notes? I'm gonna go, I got Mr. Training on the speak, and then we'll do replay.
Just, this is what I thought would happen with the marijuana industry. I have no faith at all in the state of Alaska, their ability to control anything. I've seen them deal with with alcohol so lackadaisical, it's ridiculous. And I'm sorry it happened this time, but this is a good example of us using our code enforcement officers to deal with this issue. I appreciate the fine and this learning process. And as we have other marijuana dealers coming in front of us, hopefully they won't get into this debt, but it's just a learning process for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I might present a slightly different view of this. I'm being contacted regularly by people who think that the assembly has drug our feet into slowing down the legalization process. And they're wondering, how come it's been 2 years and they can't go to some retail outlet to buy legal marijuana, because people are lining up all over the state to buy the marijuana legally. And that's actually a good thing. That's what we're hoping for, that we can eliminate the black market and get to a legal market where they actually pay taxes and are legitimate business people. And it's unfortunate that Brian made this error, but he's been unfortunate from the beginning. If you recall, he was on our docket, one of the very first two licenses that we were dealing with. And after we approved the first license, then we talked about his license and ended up postponing that for 2 weeks and sending it to this committee. And that's how come we're seeing all these licenses at this committee level now. And so we're to the point where he's sort of been made an example out of already. And I'm not saying he didn't make a mistake, but I think everyone, all the other licensees, were a witness to his mistake. And I actually think this probably helped the overall industry. And it was a learning situation for all the other owners to know that, okay, well, I don't want to make a mistake like that, because you get a really, really large amount of negative publicity, not only for yourself, but for the whole entire industry. And I can tell you that industry people that I've spoken with were embarrassed by this situation. So I think the fact that the state didn't take any action and that Brian's already paid a fine of $1,100, I think that's already sufficient enough punishment. So I'll be voting to not pass along any more additional penalties on Brian at this point. Thank you.
Brian? I'm sorry, oh, did you? I'm sorry.
I just want to say to Pete, I think in part the reason the city has taken so long to get up, because we had to wait for the state to some degree. straight to the docket. I always assumed all these would come to this committee for a review, and I think it's a good process because not only has many members of the industry come in and realize right ahead, everybody coming in knows two issues: security, odor, right? So it's been helpful for us to have that conversation, but we've had them here among 4 or 5 of us versus the entire 11, and I think it's definitely streamlined the process. So I think it's been a good process to set up, and regardless of who comes first or who comes 10, if somebody comes, the 100th person, it's going to probably be more succinct process than the first one, just because they are first. But I'm not looking to be retributive at all. But I think it was, as soon as this happened, I spoke to Bruce, I spoke to a number of people in the industry, and they all reflected the same thing you said to me, or you just said. They were embarrassed. They didn't want this to be the face of the industry. And like I said, hey, I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't a mistake, but I am going to say it was a violation of law. And every other operator that I've talked to has clearly said that's like the #1 cardinal rule they knew they couldn't give out free. So that's why I'm saying, could it be a learning moment? I'm gonna say, okay, I might go there, but I am going to scrutinize that license again when it comes up next year. And if there's any violations, I don't think they should be a renewal. That's the discussion for next year, though. But again, I'm not just gonna give anybody a rubber stamp and say this assembly is totally fine with this license at this point, or this committee, because they've already demonstrated they might have only gotten 1 violation per group of however many products they gave out, but by his own admission, he's violated code at least 8 times. So that's why I say it could be a learning experience. I'll give him that. Maybe it was. And it was an expensive experience. $1,100 is not cheap, in my opinion. But I'm not, I won't be voting for any recommendation on this particular license, either for or against, on this. I'm going to just not, because I think sometimes it's better for the assembly to consider issues without any preconceived notion.
Thank you. Yep.
This process is working the way it's supposed to. As Amy said, could you imagine this committee in front of 11 assembly members? It would be a nightmare. I've been in assembly for a few weeks. It would be a nightmare. By coming to committee, most occurrences, it comes from flood, it sells right into the assembly. That's the reason we created this process. It's working the way it's supposed to. How many licenses we approved in the last 2 days? 7 of them? So the process is working the way it's supposed to, versus another way to do it. And people in the assembly appreciate this because they'd rather us spend the time to look into this than them have to go through it all. They're taking our recommendations. So it's just,
And we're
it's
able
the
to
process.
highlight the concerns and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's what our job is as committee, is to highlight the issues, problem spot, and offer recommendations.
Well, and originally I thought sending this to this committee was going to be a bad idea, and I was wrong. It turned out to be a good idea. So.
Okay. Good. Generally, this is a assembly committee meeting, so we got priority, but
Yes, I understand.
not ignoring you. So go ahead.
Well, first, I don't fully understand the city's play here. I got a call from Mr. Frost telling me they tore up the citation that is gone. So I don't know if I actually have a violation or a citation of anything against my license. Jack Frost told me he tore it up.
Did you write a check?
I wrote a check, but he said it wasn't, the violation's gone. I didn't understand that.
What violation did it?
It's been torn up.
Okay, again.
I don't understand the process.
We're not,
And I didn't want to debate you, I'm just telling you, I got tore up, at least that's what I've been told, so, I believe it's gone. I don't want to debate you, but the assembly didn't ask me what's going on, I've written a statement, it isn't like I was standing there with the tray full of samples, it's not what was going on there. But it isn't happening anymore, and he's correct, the industry has seen this, and they recognize, I've tried to make sure they recognize that there's no gray area here, that it's very cut and dry, what's black and white and where the greatness is. But something that I'd like to point out to everybody, you've seen these, right? Right next to Weddleton's, Bosco's ad? Right next to Bosco's, Alaska Shatterbox. You should read that ad. This is in the press. Everybody else does though. What's that ad say there?
Alaska Shatterbox on no delivery fees. Wait, first of all, why are they delivering? Only marijuana concentrates, order up to 8 grams.
Here's another one. Take that one too. Everybody
Those
in the
guys,
industry is concerned about this.
this particular one, that particular one, they have put, all you have to do is mention the code word free samples, and they'll add free samples to your delivery. And they've advertised that on my social media.
Well, we appreciate you writing it up, so, you know, this is totally separate issue.
I understand.
Oh, we appreciate, is this the same group of
No,
person?
it's the same paper, same different ad, different person. There's two people out there doing it right now.
Oh, absolutely crying delivery for him.
And so that's Michael Kreitz, and he's up for felony charges, and I've pointed both of these out to the prosecutor that's handling.
Okay.
Yeah,
Last time I heard they were taking care of it.
Well, these were Black Friday ads that ran last week. They haven't taken care of it very far. They're still happening. You can call them right now, anytime you want, get a free delivery. I mean, you know, I'll take the persecution, I'll take it,
Okay,
but.
so this is a whole different issue, so.
Well, I
so- and that's-
understand.
If I could just say this, I'm not out here to lambast you. I think the message from my perspective as an assembly member is the code is there, the conditions on your license are serious. And I believe as an assembly member, if you violate the conditions of your license, you potentially could have your license terminated. And, or added restrictions to it or whatever. And I don't want that to be lost, just because the state said, oh, well, we're not gonna do anything. The city obviously cited you, you had to pay $1,100. But I want you to recognize, you know, moving forward, it is my intent with every single, bit of vigor that I have in me, when I see violations against the license, or that, conditions of a license, it's gonna be vigorously, reviewed. And I just, and that's all, that's the message that I wanna send to you, because, and I think you've got it.
It's been received loud and clear.
Yeah, and so that's why I say it's not, I'm not here to lambast you or, you know, whatever, but there is a whole industry that's watching to see where our reaction's going to be. And frankly, I think you're getting off easy. That's my opinion. But, you know, I have to allow for, was it really a mistake? Was it really just, you know what, I haven't actually opened my store yet, I haven't, whatever. I have to allow for that. So I'm being far more generous than I typically would be. Let's put it that way.
Anything else from the assembly members? Jenny, you had your hand up, is it on this issue specifically?
Yeah, it's on this issue, and I'm not advocating for or against Brian, but I will tell you that, the industry seat on the Marijuana Control Board, Brandon Emmett, did give you a strong talking to and was very clear that this was not acceptable, and so I don't think the board just said willy-nilly, you're off free. Brandon was very specific about this reflects poorly on the industry, blah, 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 like for like 5 minutes. And then the Alaska Marijuana Industry Association did also send, you know, an admonishment to Mr. Brian and just to reiterate that we're not as an industry supportive of this. And I think Brian gets it. That's all I want to say. I don't want to go like for or against. I just, from the industry, that's something that we have done to self-police.
It was a meeting with the director and enforcement as well, with just a letter that I wrote and met with them for quite some time and over a couple of different times. Of course, so it didn't go away quickly and easily. They did do a thorough investigation.
You know, and if I can just say one more, you know, just personally, when I initially heard about this and I saw the potential issue, you know, right in my mind, as somebody who's watched a lot of who's been through this process, I was just honestly shocked that anybody would even try to argue the fact that giving away free marijuana, anytime you even apply for a license, was a good idea. And so my initial concern is, okay, the rules are here, but now do we have somebody who says, well, I'm gonna kind of skirt them, because technically it doesn't say X, Y, Z. I mean, you know, clearly what was meant. So that's why, well, now you do, let's put it that way. So that's why I look at it now with a different lens, because now I'm looking at it like, okay, because we've gone through this with alcohol licenses, where somebody, this is what their conditions say, but they'll hang some violative on one word and try to get around it. And that's not what we intend to do for conditions on the license. We intend for you to. And so that's why I was concerned, frankly. I thought, well, do we have a bad operator here now? Is this what we're gonna, is this the first one? Because over the years, they'll creep up. I'm not copy this and just add it? Can I keep this or do you want me to?
Yeah, as long as that stays blacked out where it's blacked out.
Yeah, thanks, John. Jenna, do you know if the municipal code enforcement office has been notified of the two operators that are operating?
I have no idea. I just
That may be
know.
something that the industry wants to,
Enforcement knows about it, they don't care. They don't have the state enforcement, it's like, I can't do anything with them.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I know you guys have probably
Right, and I-
notified them, but municipal code enforcement.
I'll look into that.
maybe
I don't know
want
if they
to-
have been notified. I just know because I, have a pro bono criminal case that I represent Larry Stanford of the former discrete deliveries. And they're facing 150 years. And so the prosecutor Kelly, who's handling that case, the Michael Price case, the Charlotte Green case, I've repeatedly said to her, because we haven't gotten any plea offers from her, you know, and I'm like, hey, you know, we've got all these people advertising in the newspaper, can you at least give us a plea offer? Or, you know, go after these guys, the other ones that are still in there. And the response has been pretty much, you know, sorry, see you at trial, so.
I have a couple other thoughts on, and I'm not gonna say I'm a public record right now, but I have a couple other thoughts on how to deal with this issue particularly. So maybe we can talk about those two later.
Is there anything else? Just offhand, there's also this potluck that shares a wall with Beacon Hill downtown, and that's something that we do have
Forrest is working on
attorneys
that.
looking at that, so that we know there are cases that are people trying to do it right, get dinged, and people just flaunting it, seem to get off, but they're not being ignored, but it is a little difficult. The tools aren't immediately there to enforce these things.
The one, they're advertising on my Facebook, on my social media, that's what's really getting me, is it says right there,
Right.
he's closed, but call us for free samples, you know, and we'll deliver, or we'll add free samples to the delivery is what it says on my reviews, on my.
Yeah,
They're supposed to give them the address for APD and stuff, over APD.
That's why I took pictures.
They're in every newspaper,
Okay,
every week
so-
they're there.
Yeah, that's a whole different issue, but I have a couple ideas.
So we have a recommendation on what to do here.
So it's assembly. We'll deal with it on Tuesday.
We have a recommendation or no recommendation? Okay, any, okay. Okay, going forward, no recommendation. Thank you. Okay, anything else?
Yes. I have wanted to talk with the Assembly about what types of modifications the Assembly wants to see for approved licensees. We have very restrictive rules in place right now, which only allow two types of modifications to be approved administratively, and that is the first increase or decrease of the licensed premises by no more than 10%, and a change in the hours of operation. And any other type of change requires an applicant or a licensee to come back to the Assembly. We've had several examples of licensees making what seem to be relatively minor modifications. We had a licensee, you may recall, I think you approved this, they changed their, they contracted with a different security company, and they made a couple of other minor changes to their operating plan. But because of our very tight rules, they had to bring that back to the Assembly, and there's a decent sized fee with that as well. We have another situation of a 3-story facility where they've moved, you know, one room from the first floor to the second floor and the different rooms from the second floor to the first. You know, they've just shifted some things internally, which has changed, you know, the size of some of those spaces by, you know, 40 square feet. I mean, something very negligible, but they're going to have to come back to the Assembly because, again, of our tight rules. So we have discussed this in our kind of omnibus land use ordinance changes that we discussed at this committee back at the end of September. And I had made some proposals, and the Assembly, the reaction of various Assembly members who were at that meeting was, no, we need to work on this some more. And I'm feeling that we need to address this actually quite quickly because it is holding up several licensees that, you know, they've gotten their approval and now they're gonna have to be delayed for 2 or 3 more months in order to come back to the Assembly just because they've made somewhat of a minor change. And you've pointed out in this committee that, oh, look, they're very specific about, you know, how they're dealing with their wastewater, and if you know, they change that, they're gonna come back. Or the gentleman yesterday who said he's gonna sell everything he cultivates in his retail store, well, pointing out if he's fabulously successful in his strain and he wants to wholesale it, he would have to come back. So, I've put a little bit of thought into, what the things that might be significant about each type of license that you might want to see, and I just want to run some ideas by you and have your reaction. So the ideas that I would like to run by you would be the only types of changes that would come back to the assembly, and every other type of change would be approved administratively, although we would probably put in some sort of catch-all, like if the planning director thinks it's really significant, then he can say, no, I'm not going to do this, it has to go to the assembly. So the things that would apply to everybody, we would keep the, instead of a change in the licensed premises, maybe just an increase of the licensed premise area of more than 10%. So if they shrink their licensed premises, you know, is that really a big deal? I don't see why the assembly would care, but if they're increasing it by more than 10%, that would come back to the assembly. Or a second or subsequent increase of less than 10%. So they can't do, you know, 9%, 9%, 9%, 9% administratively. And those two things already exist. I think the addition of a caretaker unit on the property would be something that should come back to the assembly. And then for retail, perhaps expanding the hours of operation, not decreasing them, but expanding them, or possibly only expanding them if they're within a certain distance of a residential area. So that would be something to consider. If there were any changes to their neighborhood responsibility plan that came about due to negotiations with the community council, that might be something you would want to see. Or if they made any sort of increase in their site lighting, if they were near residential, that might be something that you would want to see. So those are some ideas about retail stores. And then other types of changes, internal layout changes, you know, those are kind of things that I don't really see why the assembly would feel the need to review those.
I think Eric gets better handles administratively, because if it comes to the assembly, then it's a document that goes citywide, it's posted on the web, and then somebody that wanted to do mischief would have a diagram they could download and figure out where to make that.
Well, I think we would still want to be notified of these changes.
I know
They
you would be, but
right.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to come to the assembly.
Yeah, exactly. For cultivation, there is the possibility within a licensed premise for the amount of area devoted to cultivation to increase. So for example, if they had a large break room or office area and they decided to put that into cultivation. So maybe you would want to see if there was a significant increase in the area devoted to cultivation, even if it's within, even if the licensed premise area doesn't change. But I'm not even sure, because we don't have any kind of limit on amount, you know, area to be cultivated if you have a standard cultivation license. So if the licensed premises doesn't change, maybe you wouldn't really care about that. So that's something to think about. And then thinking about the odor issue, if there was some sort of change in their air filtering process. But again, I don't think we really have the expertise to say, well, this air filtering process is better than that one, so maybe that doesn't really make sense. Those are just some ideas. For the manufacturing process, addition of a new type of extraction process, I think, would be something that the assembly would want to see. And the Marijuana Control Board has to approve any product that is created. So the assembly could decide that they want to see the addition of new products that are going to be produced. But again, maybe you feel like the Marijuana Control Board has, you know, their oversight is sufficient for that. And then I didn't really think of anything particular to the testing that would generate the need to come to the assembly. The other thing that we can do is we can, you know, if the things that are, the changes that would be approved administratively, I mean, we can provide a monthly report of, you know, here are the changes that were filed with the department for your information. So those are some ideas. Again, I would like to try to address this quickly, perhaps having an ordinance that's introduced on December 20th so that we can have it approved in January so that we're not, Mr. Peterson talked about how the municipality as a whole, not just the assembly, is being accused of frequently of having a very slow process. And I think if I could just say one thing about that, I mean, we're the only state that didn't start out with a medical dispensary system in place. So we're the first people who are kind of building it, the whole thing from scratch.
Right.
And I think that takes time, and I don't think a lot of people really understand how much time that takes and how the government has to move relatively slowly due to the need to gather, public comment and public input. So.
And I wasn't trying to be critical of
No,
what
no,
I
I
said,
know.
I was
Yeah.
just saying that that's the perception
Exactly.
that's out there.
Exactly. So I would like to not hold up, the licensees who are making changes that really are not very significant.
Erica, rather than monthly, I like it quarterly.
Quarterly, sure.
That goes along with some of the other things we have coming to us quarterly. It keeps the workload down on you guys. But we're different than Valdez, we're different than Seward, we're different than Fulton Towns. We're large, vast majority of the state's population lives here. So it's gonna take us a long while to get this stuff done, because we're responsible to our constituents.
Yeah. No, I
Make sure it's done
agree.
correctly.
Thanks. So I'm with you on a lot of things. A lot of things that you said were already kind of in my mind or on my list. A couple things. I had put change inside of retail or cultivation inside the facility because I was thinking the same thing, and I was like, well, that's 20%. But my concern, I guess, was more on retail versus cultivation, specifically because we've had a couple that have had really tiny footprints, and they've had problems with their parking, essentially very, very little parking. And so that's the way they pitched it to us, as far as this isn't going to be an issue because, we can only do it by appointment because we only have, 240 square feet or something really small. So I think if there's, and I don't know what the magic number is, I just, like I said, I'm thinking, okay, if it's 360 square feet, 10% can only be 36 square feet, so I thought, well, maybe that's too small. So I don't know what the right number is. You're better at that than I am figuring out, because I'm not looking for the tiniest little change. That's something significant. If those people that only had 240 square feet of retail now want to do 2,000 square feet of retail, we might have a parking issue. So that's kind of what I was trying to think I would want to catch. And the other thing I would say, obviously, I had written product too, but when I wrote it, I thought, well, the state's going to catch that because any changes to the product being offered have to go back to the state, right?
Right, yeah, so MJ 15, which is a change to your operating plan, has to go back to the state, and that MJ 15 actually has to be approved by the Marijuana Control Board, versus MJ 14, which is a diagram change. Any change has to, one, be approved first by the local government, you guys have to sign off on it first, and then the board, then the AMCO administrative staff will look at it and approve or deny it, but doesn't have to go to the Marijuana Control Board. Unfortunately, there's no notice requirement on the MJ 15, which is the change of the operating plan. So maybe that's something to suggest the Marijuana Control Board have a approval from the local government before it can go to the MCB or concurrently. Maybe that's a recommendation that you guys can make to the Marijuana Control Board. Because it doesn't really make sense that MJ 14, which is diagram change, has to be approved by the locality, but MJ 15 doesn't. But that has to go in front of the Marijuana Control Board. See what I'm saying?
I think so. So
But
that's
that
why
would solve like a whole notice issue.
So in part, that's why I wasn't as concerned about product change because I know the state is really, really scrutinizing every single product that goes out there. And obviously, I have expressed this before. I am concerned about changes in manufacturing processes. I think that potentially could be a big deal, and it could be a public safety issue. The expanding hours, I think, is another one that the assembly definitely should know. Not limiting hours, but if somebody comes to us, and we've had one already where they're retail, but they're going to close by 8 o'clock at night. If there's residential anywhere around there, if they're really going to be open until midnight, that's something that I think we should at least know about, and consider. Because that may have been a reason why they got the licenses, because they said only till 8, and then 2 months later, all of a sudden now they're open till midnight. I'm just trying to make sure people are set up for success and not conflict with the neighbors. But when it comes to changes in the neighborhood responsibility plan, I see the most frequent changes being
I got a different phone number, hey, that person's not with us anymore, now it's this contact, so I'm not as concerned about assembly. I mean, I think it'll be, you know, in the community council's best interest to keep up on their community. The intent for us was not to dictate what was in there, it was just to make sure that they weren't bypassing the community councils. So I'm not concerned about seeing changes personally. Sure. Because I anticipate those changes are gonna be, hey, you're not gonna talk to Tom anymore, you're gonna talk to Betty, and oh, my phone number's changed, and, yeah. That's just my 2 cents.
On neighbor responsibility fund, we'll pick those up when they come to their renewal.
Sure.
So there's no need to give it to us monthly or weekly. We'll get a yearly renewal comes in.
But I really do like the director catch-all, because, I mean, you've seen it before, Erica, where, you know, you have the, well, yeah, you don't think of something, and then all of a sudden you look at it and you're like, ooh, I can really see it. I mean, you've done this more than I have, times 2, times 10. And so, you know, as those issues come up, I have confidence in the director to be able to say, oh, this could potentially be an issue and somebody should look at it. So I like that director catch-all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if we get to the point where we've got, you know, the businesses are pretty much opened up citywide once our initial rollout is done. If say we got 100 businesses, and so you got 100 businesses making changes, I could see where, you know, we could get bogged down at the assembly level. So I think being able to do this administratively makes really good sense. So I think you're headed in the right direction. I want to encourage you to follow through on that.
No, I like this idea, and I like the fact that, you know, you're getting us to hone in on the things that we think are important that have to come back to us. There's only a couple of them, really. I mean, a handful. But I think, for the most part, especially if we have the ability to give flexibility to the director where he says or she says, you know, hang on a second, this is something we really should at least talk about. You can send it to us.
A couple comments. One following that is there should be rights to appeal to the assembly.
Sure.
If they don't like it, so that's good. And then, you know, the increase in size is something that's puzzled me in a way, and as a retailer, it's like, I think Brian's retail is fairly small. If it were bigger, he'd have less people in line out front, they'd be inside, which is less impact on the neighborhood. So you could decrease the impact on the surrounding area if you had a bigger retail space. So it's really, so what is the real trigger here? The impact on the neighbors, and would it impact parking requirements? Like if they grow to a size where they don't have proper parking, then maybe we need to know because the external impacts are more. So it seems like that's more of a trigger than the size, but the size comes from the state.
No.
They require that's us.
No, I mean, they're bringing us an application saying we're gonna be this size. I mean, there's 2 things. There's the line around them, that's the licensed premises, and increasing the licensed premises definitely needs some sort of approval. But then there's within that licensed premises making changes, which can increase or decrease the size of the operation, whether it's a retail or a cultivation. And I mean, even on an administrative approval, there would still be you know, if they were increasing the size of their retail store within their licensed premises, like taking stockroom space and turning it into retail space, there would still be a parking evaluation. So it's not like going through the administrative thing is you just get to check off, and I mean, there's still that evaluation that the parking is sufficient, that sort of thing.
Well, so if in a case where you have retail with cultivation, someone gets tired of growing and they make more money on retail, gets rid of the cultivation, makes it all retail.
Those
that
are
would be
licensed
triggered now.
premise changes.
So that would come to us now.
Yes.
So I care about that.
Well, most of them are the B3, right? When they have them in both locations. So, isn't it?
No, we got a lot in I-1.
That have both?
We will, more coming, I think.
Yeah. Say, well, I guess it depends on their zoning, really, honestly. Because if they are B3, they have to have cultivation.
No, they have to have retail.
Oh, the retail and the cultivation, yeah, they have to have them together.
And then some hour changes, I guess the name, you know, I'd almost say if they go beyond X hours, like some are till 8. If you're in Sonora and you're closing at 8, that doesn't make sense to me.
I think there's only one setting.
I mean, my store's open past 8. So it's like, so if they go 10, I mean, do I care? seems odd to me that so many have such short hours, even they got one downtown that was closing before, it was like 6 or something, that was very unusual. So if they realize that I'm missing an opportunity to go to 8, so, I don't know, it could be bracketed and say any extension of hours beyond
Well, see, and I think it's
noon or noon to
I
10
think it's
or
a case by
something.
case basis. Because to me, you know, I'm gonna have far more concerns if somebody is right up against residential versus if they're in a business district. Right? And so, to me, I think it depends on where they're located.
B3 butts up to residential,
does.
typically here, I think. It's an art. Okay, anybody, Jana?
I would just say for the change in the retail space or change in any space when you're enlarging it, you do want to know because you want to make sure your restricted access areas and your point of sale areas are still being covered by the camera system. And I think that's really the issue that would need to be looked at, and that's what AMCO looks at. And then to the other point about the hours, we would have to file an MJ-15 if we're going to have different hours than what our operating plan says. So we would have to, that would be good to add that notice for MJ-15, because then you would automatically get it.
But the question is whether it can be approved administratively or have to go back to the assembly.
Right, and then you could do that case by case basis, maybe. But I don't know, I mean, that one's a little bit tougher. But just for the MJ-14, the restricted access areas will change, and that has to be looked at.
You know, a year from now, we'll have other ideas and changes. We don't have that many businesses in operation right now. Let's give it a year, and see what comes into you that we need to change, coming to the assembly.
I think right now we're kind of focused, Erica's list of things that we would
I
actually
appreciate
look
it,
at.
Dylan.
Yeah, I think are kind of small. And most of it is what we're saying is, the kind of what Dick's saying is leave most of it administrative, I think is what I'm hearing you say.
I mean, I don't think the assembly needs to approve somebody moving furniture around, there's small,
No.
small things
And that's why
like
I said,
that.
like, with the community responsibility plan, I don't care if they change points of contact in their business, I don't care if they change your phone number, none of that.
We can pick up the meeting.
What's that?
When they come up for renewal, we can pick it up then.
Yeah, the only things that I'm, really concerned about are just the small things that you pointed out in your list. But the most of it looks like we're saying would be okay with administrative review.
Is that your point? Okay, so you'd like to see less coming?
Let's come into the assembly, let them handle things administratively. It's no different than we pass the budget. We tell them administratively, make any changes to bring the compliance. Same thing with this.
Are you okay, Victor, though, with if they change like their big things, like the manufacturing process? If
I
all-
wanna know about that.
Okay, so some of the big things we talked about,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, that's where I'm at too.
And when the state requires municipal approval, is administrative approval good enough for them?
Yes.
That is, they don't have to.
So may I draft something up based on this, and can we meet next week, even if for just for half an hour to go over it, just so we can have something ready?
We
for
have a
this
meeting
December?
scheduled next week.
Do we have a meeting scheduled?
Do we have one on the 8th?
There
I have
isn't
something.
there isn't an assembly meeting the following week.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think it's a regular meeting, but,
We could do that.
I thought I had some sort of meeting here on the 8th.
yeah, it's the non-marijuana
I
review.
show at 9 o'clock, economic committee.
Committee, yeah.
The non-marijuana
But we can put
ones.
whatever on
That's
it.
been like,
We could add it to that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know, I have.
What's the Thursday without
Do you want to
talking
meet,
about marijuana?
is it important? I mean, it's nice to meet here because everybody expects us to be here. Is it would you, any staff from planning want to be in on this too? Or?
We could, yeah, sure.
Because you'd be implementing it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Okay, I just like, I need to have people come to City Hall if they don't have to.
Sure.
It'll be the same, but okay, so we can be here. So you want to make that an agenda item for?
Yeah, I think that's a
Week
great idea,
from
'cause
yesterday.
then we can hit, the target timeline of getting it introduced quickly. And I think Erica's right, I think we're gonna see people that initially when they started and they put up in their applications, there was a lot of detail they thought had to be there. And now they're realizing as they're coming, months later, well, we didn't really have to put it in there, but initially we thought we had to, so I think you're gonna see a lot of tiny little tweaks, especially to their operating plans, whether they put their water, have to haul it off, that was a big one, or whether they can just dump it down the drain, and I think we're gonna just see stuff like that, so.
So do you So we got a lot of industry people here who may have thoughts on this. Can they email you with some ideas?
Sure.
Or how do you want to make that, you want it done now or wait for that meeting?
Either way, I mean, if you guys have ideas, feel free to email me. Alternately, you can also see what I come up with for next week and then email me after that, because there'll be time between next week and. Yeah, because I can give it to you, I can give it to you to implement.
We can't make a page deadline, we can always just put it on the
Yeah.
floor.
Oh,
Or
it
the
can
agenda.
be on the addendum too.
I'm not supposed to put stuff on the agenda, but you guys.
We can, I'll be happy to put it
We
on
will
the
be happy
agenda.
to for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Adjourn?
Speak to something quickly?
Sure.
I'd like to speak to the perception of the delays that the city has or hasn't. I don't feel, until just recently, any type of a delay. There's a process that you have to go through. And in analyzing it from the get-go, I looked at it myself, and I anticipated 2 years ago that I would start my cultivation facility in September and my retail in October. All things considered, I missed by a month each. There's not really a delay, and I've had the media many times try to bait me into that, asking, what is the delays, what are these delays? And I won't give them because I haven't felt a delay, honestly. I don't feel, the process is there. I've known the process because I've been in real estate for a long time, so I know the building process, I know your process. I've been aware of it, and I don't feel that there's been a delay. And I appreciate the work that you guys have done. Coming in front of this committee, I think, is better than coming in front of the assembly up front, so I have no problem with the added step, and I think it's a much more easy process now that we do it here. So I just want to commend you guys for the work that you've done. I know it's not easy, and I've tried to keep quiet and not make it ugly in the media, because they bait me for stuff all the time, and I won't give it to them, and I do want to say that I appreciate your time, the efforts that you put into this, because it has been a long road.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
You done?
We're done.
Motion adjourned.